Strap on your seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. You're about to go on a journey. It's First Contact Radio with Joshua Poet.
All right, Dirk, thank you very much. This is Josh Poet, First Contact Radio. FirstContactRadio.com is the place you can find the stories I'm talking about today. And, of course, we're talking about the battle of good and evil each and every day. It's going on in the world. Prophecy is being fulfilled before our very eyes. If you're missing it, you might want to wake up, because this is the time that we've been reading about and hearing about for such a long part of our lives, at least the people who've been around for a while. The young people, you may not understand, but the older folks, you understand. This is very seeing the battle playing itself out. And if you're paying attention, you probably understand that we really can't stretch this too much further before we really get to the point of no return. So something's going to have to happen sometime soon. And I think we're in that moment, just based on the stories that you've been hearing. First story up here, Chris Wray's FBI continues to cover for Team Comey's Russian shenanigans. This is from John Solomon. Now, we know we've heard some solid reporting from him over the course of this last year. Says the FBI is going to court to fight the public release of a small number of documents the State Department sent to agents from Christopher Steele, the British intelligence operative and Hillary Clinton's paid political muckraker during the 2016 election. Normally, such Freedom of Information Act cases don't merit public attention. This one does. To hear the FBI tell it, the release of former Deputy Assistant Kathleen Kovalik's documents is tantamount to giving up the keys to President Trump's nuclear briefcase, aiding the enemy or assisting terrorists. We know that terrorist organizations and other hostile or foreign have the capacity and the ability to gather information from myriad sources, analyze it, and deduce meaning and methods from disparate details to defeat the U.S. government's collection efforts. An FBI Assistant Section Chief swore in an affidavit supporting their request to keep the documents secret. The FBI cannot afford to jeopardize the fragile relationships that exist between the United States and certain foreign governments, the FBI official declared in another dramatic argument against the conservative group Citizens United request to release the memos. And if that wasn't enough, the Bureau actually claimed the FBI special agents have privacy interests from unnecessary, unofficial questioning as to the conduct of investigations and other FBI businesses. In other words, agents don't want to have to answer to the public, which pays their salary, when questions arise about the investigative. All right, there's more to the article. I'm going to let you check that out for yourself. Point of the matter is that we're getting the same old nonsense from the FBI that was going on before. You have to wonder, is Wray a good guy or is he a bad guy? I guess we'll find out as time unfolds. Now, when I talked about a timeline, I think that we see there's definitely a timeline. The story I read the other day about Antifa has them already out doing these militant rallies where they're training young persons how to get involved with Antifa and learn how to fight like Antifa, otherwise known as Pantifa. Look up the pictures, you'll know why. Anyway, this Antifa group has declared that on the 1st of September, and this is allegedly, we'll say, they seem to be planning a siege of the border down there in El Paso. I was reminded last night as I was watching the clown show called The First Night of Democratic Debates that Beto O'Rourke happens to be from El Paso, the same place where Antifa seems to be heading down. I couldn't help but wondering if there was some sort of connection between those groups. So the fact that we have Antifa allegedly claiming that they are going to be sieging the border 30 days from tomorrow, and that at the moment they are involved with trainings, I would imagine that we have a deadline by which something needs to be done to make sure there isn't going to be some sort of problem, some sort of violence. Because it would appear that the literature associated with the upcoming event are literatures that show violence to agents, violence to the facilities, and violence basically to the American system. So we'll see how this plays out. President Trump has been talking about them being a domestic terrorist. that he believes they should be classified that way. Many Americans do. However, the Democratic Party doesn't see it that way because this is their arm. This is their violent extremist arm that is out there fighting for their cause. And one of those who is helping to fund this organization would be good old George Soros. Good old George Soros. So it's unfortunate that most of the Democrats who support the Democrat Party are unaware of these kind of shenanigans and this kind of lack of morality, but that's exactly what the situation entails. All right, let's change stories here. The battle of good and evil. Sometimes it means that the ones you think are good really aren't. The ones you think are bad might be the ones who are the good guys. Sometimes if you take a look at who's trying to resist and who's trying to stop something or let something go, helps you to understand as well. So we need to pay attention. We can't take things at face value anymore because we're finding out that some of those instances were not what they appeared to be. Case in point, the issue of human trafficking. And we've been hearing about individuals that have been involved with the human trafficking that are somewhat surprising, to say the least. Certainly Jeffrey Epstein is not a surprise because he was already convicted of this crimes years before, though he got off with a slap on the wrist, basically. There are those attached to him that are surprising. One of those being Bill Clinton. We have stories about Chris Tucker, who is involved with him at the island. There's an article about him. There's numerous others. We've seen pictures of Oprah Winfrey with Harvey Weinstein. You'll hear more about her in a bit. We've heard the stories about the Vatican and the priests and the abuse that goes on to the children. But sit down, because this one might knock you for a loop. Indian lawmaker says Mother Teresa should be stripped of civilian honor over baby trafficking scandal. It's been nearly 40 years since Mother Teresa was conferred India's highest civilian honor, the Bharat Ratna Jewel of India. But there are growing calls for the accolade to be rescinded. Last week, Indian authorities said they busted a baby trafficking racket in the shelter run by the Missionaries of Charity, the religious order set up by the late Albanian Indian missionary in 1950. Child welfare authorities said a nun and one other person linked to the charity were selling babies to childless couples for between $500 to $1,450. It's the latest in a litany of scandals that have largely simmered beneath the surface for decades, but now threaten to explode in full view with high-profile figures linked to India's ruling Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party, otherwise known as BJP, leading the charge to revisit Mother Teresa's legacy. On Thursday, Subramanian Swamy, a senior BJP MP, said Mother Teresa's Bharat Ratna Award should be rescinded if the missionaries of the charity group is found guilty. I 100% support it, he told India Today when asked if he was in favor of rescinding the honor posthumously if the allegations are proven true. So we'll see how this one plays off. However, there seems to be lots to look at here. I say where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, there certainly is lots of smoke. One of the bizarre things that I learned along the way is that Mother Teresa had a home for children in the Washington, D.C. area that was opened in conjunction with a woman named Hillary Clinton, who we know is being looked at for child trafficking, for crimes against children. How do I know that? Because it was in the last IG report last June, page 294. Go look it up yourself. It's available online. Okay, so let's jump back into the idea of media control, mind control. How does this happen? Let's go through the historical timeline. We're going to go back to 1921. We have the Council on Foreign Relations. The Council on Foreign Relations was put in place in order to keep the media at bay. So the 25 largest media organizations were infiltrated by these Council on Foreign Relations members. Therefore, they would all report back to one person who would dictate what was the talking point or so on of the day. and what story they were going to put out. The people were clueless to this fact, and media began to be controlled. As time continued on, and now we're into the war. We got World War II ends in 1945, but through the time that World War II was going on, in Nazi Germany arose a movement that was about propaganda by a guy named Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels, let me read you a little about him. He was a German Nazi politician and Reich propaganda of Nazi Germany from 1933 to 45. He was one of Adolf Hitler's closest and most devoted associates. He was known for his skills in public speaking and deeply virulent anti-Semitism, which was evident in his publicly voiced views. He advocated progressively harsher discrimination, including the extermination of Jews and the Holocaust. Goebbels, who aspired to be an author, obtained a degree of Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Heidelberg in 1921. He joined the Nazi Party in 1924 and worked with George Strasser in the Northern Branch. He was appointed Bauleiter, which is the district leader for Berlin in 1926, where he began to take an interest in the use of propaganda to promote the party and its program. After the Nazi seizure of power in 1933, Goebbels' propaganda ministry quickly gained and exerted control over the news media, arts, information in Germany. He was particularly adept in the relatively media of radio and film for propaganda purposes. Topics for party propaganda include anti-Semitism, attacks on the Christian churches, and after the start of the Second World War, attempting to shape morale. All right, the important part of what I read to you there was about the process that he used. Okay, these were the principles of propaganda. Here's a list of principles here. Let me read some of these to you. Based upon Goebbels' principles of propaganda, 1, propagandist must have access to intelligence concerning events and public opinions. 2, propaganda must be planned and executed by only one authority. 3, propaganda consequences of an action must be considered in planning that action. 4, propaganda must affect the enemy's policy in action. 5, declassified operational information must be available to implement a propaganda campaign. 6, to be perceived, propaganda must evoke the interest of the audience and must be transmitted through an attention-getting communication medium. 7, credibility alone must determine whether propaganda output should be true or false. 8, the purpose, content, and effectiveness of enemy propaganda, the strength and effects of its expose, and the nature of current propaganda campaigns determine whether enemy propaganda should be ignored or refuted. 9, credibility, intelligence, and the possible effects of communicating determine whether propaganda materials should be censored. Material from enemy propaganda must be utilized in operations while it helps diminish enemy's prestige or lend support to the propaganda's own objective. Black rather than white propaganda must be employed when the latter is credible or produces undesirable effects. Propaganda must be facilitated by leaders with prestige. Propaganda must be carefully timed. Propaganda events and people with distinctive phrases or slogans. Propaganda to the home front must prevent the raising of false hopes which can be blasted by future events. Propaganda to the home front must create an optimum anxiety level. Propaganda to the home front must diminish the impact of frustration. It must facilitate the displacement of aggression by specifying the targets for hatred. And propaganda cannot immediately affect strong counter tendencies. Instead, it must offer some form of action or diversion or both. These are the techniques that Joseph Goebbels felt that would be best suited to be placed in the media, movies, the radio. So in 1945, after World War II ended, after these German techniques, these propaganda techniques were used and came to fruition in Germany, in 1945, in a project called Paperclip, German scientists were brought here to America. And along came their propaganda techniques. 2 years later, in 1947, the CIA was created. Also happened to be the same year that Roswell occurred, the first time we have this modern day experience of UFOs. A couple years later, after the CIA, we now have a program of media control called Mockingbird, in which CIA are placed in the media. And then we get to the 70s, and now we have hearings about how much of these CIA agents are actually embedded in things. So we have a progression that goes from Nazi Germany and the propaganda machine that then went to America and continued again. And that propaganda machine puts that information in television shows, news shows, radio shows, music, movies, books. Every form of entertainment we have is blasting out propaganda. And we're seeing it, aren't we? We're seeing it loud and clear in places like Facebook and Twitter. We're seeing the way in which they're censoring people. This is a battle of good and evil. Okay? Good and evil. Good people are trying to do certain things in life. Bad people are coming along trying to counteract them. If you heard the debate last night, I'm sure you may have noticed that those on the stage really have a different view of what they see for the world than the current situation we're in right now. Many of them talked about something new. We're going to do something new, what we're not doing. Others call for the socialist policy. Bottom line is they don't see the world the same way. Pete Buttigieg wants to change the Constitution. They want to go in and they want to behave in ways that would seem like dictators. If somebody else, if these were, let's say, conservatives or Republicans that were on the stage saying the same thing, the talk today in the media would be about how they all sounded like dictators, want to be dictators, because they all had their plan. They were going to do it their way. I'll wait till tonight comes. Tonight you get the black folks. You got Corey and Kamala, and they're going to remind us that they're black. So in case you're watching the show and your eyes are closed, they will remind you, and they will let you know. It'll be different. Last night there was only the white folks. The Party of Diversity brought us all white folks last night, but there was one gay guy in there, so I guess that's the diversity. But tonight will be another strange night with them spreading their racist views and thoughts and their obsessions with colors and this and that. It's really a bizarre way that they go about doing things, thinking that people are lumped into the way they are because of their color of their skin. It doesn't have anything to do with the color of the skin. It has to do with the content of the character. See, one of the things, throw at you real quick, Canaan, the other books I talked about the serpent seed. Remember early on that serpent seed, how that needed before Adam, how they were a black race, and it seemed that those that were problematic within that started mixing, they were black. Well, God set that aside because there was something in that DNA, not the skin color, but within the DNA that was not right. And so the new race was created, and in order to just simply understand the difference so they didn't get mixed up, this one was painted differently. And the idea was don't mix together. Because as long as you weren't mixed together, you could tell that within this group of people here, that's where the demon seed, the serpent seed is. And with here, this is that pure lineage. Now here we are in 2019, and people have mixed and mixed and mixed and mixed so much that we can no longer look at it the same way because there were less people on the earth and there were very specific designations. This group, when they were made, could be told that they were the bad group simply because there was only a certain amount that were made that were that color. And this group was only a certain amount that were this color. Well, now everybody's mixed. We can't look at the color and say, okay, that color is a determining factor. We have to look at the content of the character. We have to look deeper inside that individual to see where that serpent seed is. And that's what we're following, that lineage from Cain down into Ham, Canaanites into the world, the ones who are causing the problems today. It's all connected, one long thread, one long thread. Now, this is a spiritual battle, and as such, the Democrats are bringing forth their spiritual challenger against President Trump, and that would be Williamson. Before you get too excited about Marrian Williamson out there, let me share with you. I know I've talked about this when they did the last debate. I believe I brought this up. I'm going to do it again because people have short memories, short attention spans. They need to be reminded. So this is an article, and it's a long article. I'm just going to jump to the most pertinent passages. And this one here, it says Ellen DeGeneres stand-up comedy act several years ago included a joke about going to heaven, finding that God is a black woman named Oprah. The Oprah show is more than mass pro-social behavior modification. It's influenced a worldwide audience to channel in a new religion. According to Oprah, her search for meaningful life in God led her to Marianne Williamson and the New Age teachings of Course in Miracles. She believes that the principles of A Course in Miracles can change the world. She was promoting it on her daily classes and on her radio channel. All right, Marianne Williamson was doing shows every day. She said that she'll be on Oprah and Friends every single day talking about the ideas in the Course in Miracles, so on and so forth. Okay, you heard her the other night. That's kind of her whole spiel. Now, Course in Miracles does have some very, very good points in there. It has a lot of information that's good. But we have to wonder about where's the source of this information. Is this like the Bible where you're saying this comes from God? Or this was a book inspired by God? Well, let's look because we have some ideas of where it was inspired. In order to talk about that, I have to tell you about MK Ultra again. MK Ultra was the code name for a clandestine, illegal CIA human medical research program run by the Office of Scientific Intelligence with medical research experts of Reinsperr's Heimlich Himmler's War Criminal Organization, the SS. MK Ultra involved the serendipitous use of many types of drugs, as well as other methods to assassinate, racial mass murder, control the mind, and mass control populations. Project MK Ultra was first brought to wide public attention in 1975 by congressional hearings, through investigations by the Church Committee and by presidential commission known as the Rockefeller Commission. Investigative efforts were hampered by a code of secrecy and the fact that CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MK Ultra files destroyed in 1973. To this day, the most specific information regarding MK Ultra remains highly classified and top secret. MK Ultra and its clandestine illegal programs of assassinations, racial mass murder, and control of the mind and mass mind control population continues, but it is far more ultra secret than ever before. Let us continue on. How does this tie into Marianne Williamson? How does this tie into Oprah Winfrey? The next section is entitled Oprah, the CIA Keystone Spiritual Awakening, A Course in Miracles. Dr. William Thetford, professor of medical psychology, Columbia University, assisted Dr. Helen Schumann as a scribe in the initial channeling of A Course in Miracles book, originally published in 1975 by an organization called the Foundation for the Investigation of Parasensory Phenomena. From 1971 to 1978, Dr. William Thetford, along with David Saunders, headed the CIA MK Ultra Subproject 130, Personality Theory, while at Columbia University. In other words, Dr. Thetford was working for the CIA, conducting top secret personality theory of conversion hysterics experiments under MK Ultra at the same time that he was the scribe for the 1975 A Course in Miracles book. Think about that for a moment. Wrap your head around that. Now, we continue on, and it goes through his records and his degrees in working with this. Let's see here. Graduated college in 1949, worked as a research psychologist in Chicago and D.C. From 1951 to 1953, he worked on Project Bluebird, an early CIA mind control program that led to MK Ultra. He spent 1954 and 1955 as the director of clinical psychology at the Institute of Living in Hartford, Connecticut. From 1955 to 1957, he was assistant professor at University at Cornell University's CIA-funded Society for the Investigation of Human Intelligence. In 1958, he accepted an assistant professorship, which later developed into full professorship at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. During a portion of that same period, he also served as a director of clinical psychology at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. It was here that he would stay for the next 20 years, and it was here that he first met Dr. Helen Schumann, Schuckman, hiring her as a research psychologist and assistant. In other words, at the same time that Dr. Schuckman channeled the Course in Miracles from a voice that she claimed was from Master Jesus, a master named Jesus doesn't necessarily mean it's the same being. At the same time, she was also working for the CIA as an MK guinea pig. MK A Course in Miracles was written and transcribed by the CIA of Dr. Schuckman's vivid Keystone Awakening. Among vivid dream sequences, she began to become familiar with a certain godly entity who spoke to her as Jesus in her dreams. Those who finish A Course in Miracles allege you have a wholly redefined spiritual mindset, a new age worldview that includes a belief that there is no sin, no evil, no devil, and that God is in everyone and everything. A Course in Miracles teaches the students to rethink everything they believe about God and life. The course book bluntly states that this is a course in mind training and is dedicated to thought reversal. Basically, it's a CIA, MK Ultra, mass population mind control program. So, we've got a candidate running for president who has spent a great deal of time as the face of A Course in Miracles, which was transcribed by a professor who was in the MK Ultra program and a guinea pig who is being worked on in the program. This is where that book comes from. So, question is, was that book used to program the masses? Are there particular trigger words that maybe she might be using when she's up there on stage talking, that she's wanting to trigger people who read that book? Don't know. All I know is that there's something in there that's a little bit weird and strange. We'll use the term she kept using last night, wonky. There's something wonky in her whole ordeal here. The very fact that she stands there and accuses President Trump of being someone propagating dark energies and things, when I see things from the perspective, as many others, that this man was sent by God, that's very suspect, because I have to wonder how somebody who claims to be such a spiritual guru or teacher, how they are missing out where the evil is. Yet she's a strong supporter of the party. There's a letter out there to Hillary Clinton. So how is she not knowing that she's surrounding herself with those who are all involved with these very evil practices? We'll find out as time goes on, but I would say keep an eye out for that woman. Things are not as they appear to be, and she's there in order to perhaps fight against Trump with some sort of spiritual energy. I would put her in the category of a black witch. That's what I would do. I'd put her in that category, and I'd be really watchful about what she's doing in the world, and I wouldn't really trust too much, because the MK Ultra program is at the heart. So there you go, my friends. That's what we have for today. It's all about good and evil. It's a battle we're facing. We need to put on the armor of God, because these kind of situations are what we're dealing with. If you're not prepared as you're watching that show and she's saying the things she's saying, what's getting into your mind? Well, if you protect yourself, then you protect yourself from any of the negative things that may be coming your way. You may protect yourself from those who are coming at you as if they are sheep, but they're really wolves in sheep's clothing. You have to be cautious. You have to use your sense of discernment, because that's what it's about. So, trust God, my friends. Put on the armor of God. Stand strong against the evil, against the darkness. Know that God wins. And just stay vigilant, my friends. Stay vigilant. Watch your surroundings. I'll be back tomorrow with more news and information. God bless. Peace. I'm out of here.